Good morning.
Oh, hello.
Good morning, Graham. I think we're good to go.
I think this is it. Live.
Live, I know. On the
We
telly.
are alive. It's alive.
I know. On telly. Well, it's not quite telly. I don't know if people use the word telly elsewhere outside of Lincolnshire, though. So we need to consider that.
No.
Multiple people that we're working with today. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan Perry from Instructure, and I work with Canvas. Welcome to our first live stream from the region. So yeah, we've got Canvas croissants and chat today. Unfortunately, though, there are no croissants. There seems to be a shortage to be able to get them into my house at the moment. Have you managed to get any, Graham?
No, I'm afraid I didn't manage to get to. It's impossible to get to the local Morrison's here anyway, and then the local co-op doesn't have any. I did try.
No,
I didn't think pita bread would be as good, to be fair, so I didn't bother with it.
Pita bread in the cellar would probably do. Yeah, homemade Lincolnshire pan au chocolat. We keep talking about Lincolnshire because Graham and I are both in Lincolnshire, the food capital of the world, even though as the food capital of the world, we cannot get any croissants. Although I imagine we could have got some fantastic sausages, pork pies, even though that's really Leicestershire. But anyway, we should really talk about Canvas, I suppose, Graham. Yeah, let's go through the introductions. Let's talk to people a little bit about who we are and what we do to begin with, and then what we'll do is we'll go through the format of how we're going to run our session today, and hopefully the people that are watching online, they can put some questions in for us, and we'll be going through those later on. But let's start with me, due to the fact that I normally do that, and what we'll do is we'll go on to you, Graham, so that we can talk about sort of the rock star in the Canvas world that you are. My name's Jonathan Perry, as I've already said. I'm a change management consultant for Instructure. And so my role, I work with our customers when they're rolling out Canvas, really just to get the people on board with Canvas when they're using it. So I'm an ex-teacher as well. I probably don't look old enough, to be honest, but I did teach for 16 years, which surprises me.
You've got hair.
Yeah, I've got hair. It's conditioning styling products. That's what you need for that. I'll send you some and it might grow back.
You never know.
So I taught sciences for 16 years, used Canvas myself. And so really looking forward to sort of showing people today some of the things that I think are quite important and really simple, especially in the current circumstances, for engaging students with that online content. And I think a lot of the stories we'll talk about today and the examples, I'm sure you're in the same sort of boat, Graham. I've still got contact with a lot of other teachers, people that I used to work with over my career. And, seeing the way that they're adapting and they're coping with the current situation at the minute is, it's inspiring to see them with the effort that they're putting in. But also that, they're raising and they're discussing with me and we're having chats on on the online weekly meetings, with a beer, I have to admit, but those online weekly meetings sort of discussing the way that, they're actually managing the situation at the moment. So that was the aim of today, to share some of that. But what I'd like to do to everybody who's online is introduce my good friend, Graham. We've worked together for a few years now. I actually had the pleasure of working with Graham when he was on the other side as a customer for us.
The other side, the dark side.
The dark side.
Absolutely.
Graham, introduce yourself to everybody, please.
Okay, so I'm Graham. I am now a solutions engineer for Canvas, and part of that role is to work with different teams as a kind of a technical advisor expert on the Canvas product itself. Prior to that, though, I worked in teaching for over 10 years. I taught every level from NEETs, in fact, so right from the bottom, and also in the schools as well, right the way through to level 7. I've authored 2 full-time degree programs, and I've taught pretty much all of those classes at some stage or other, either through blended or flipped or through all different kinds of hybrid methods, using Canvas, of course. So I've got a lot of experience in the classroom. I need to be innovative. I taught programming and games design for a long time, video games design. So you've got to be pretty innovative with those guys, and that because they're at the forefront of that kind of thing, and you've got to think of really interesting ways to you've got to be more interesting than the latest video game, that's for sure, which is not easy when it's Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto comes out, let me tell you. When you walk in, you've got an empty classroom, you know why. So you've got to be always on your toes with interesting, and these guys are super, those guys particularly were super used to using computers and using IT and expecting that kind of next level interaction. So you've just got to think on your feet, but also utilizing things that make your life as a teacher easier, which is really what the remit was for me. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the VLE was doing the things I needed to do, but making my life easier. Not the whole plan is to make it so that I can do the things I need to do quickly. So hello to everybody who's signing in online, by the way. Nice to see you all. But yeah, that's me, John. That was it. And also, yes, I was in a rock band for a year as well, which is ironic because you've got the guitars on the wall, John, and I don't. So I'm not sure what that says about it. But
3 of them, I suppose. There's a bit of product placement there for a few. I'm not one of those people that's big into sort of product placement or anything along those lines.
Very good.
Well, let's crack on, Graham. Let's get into this and let's show some people some things that we think are quite important. You know, I'm sure the people that are online, and I'm seeing people from Spain, London, all over the world, the Philippines.
The global broadcast, John. We are across the globe.
Yeah, and some UK cities as well, Bolton there.
Yeah.
So the format that we're going to go through, Graham and I today, we've got 3 questions, and these questions are ones that have come up either, you know, with Graham where he's talking to prospective customers, or for me when I'm talking with the rollout and I'm first meeting with teachers that, you know, it's their first sort of experience of sort of Canvas, and they've got sort of certain key questions and things that they want to think about. Or the other side of it as well is the way that they sort of approach it. Some of the things that, you know, that teachers do that could actually make the you know, teachers' life, students' life a little bit easier. So I'm just going to go to the first question that we've got, and I'm going to take this one, and this comes up quite a bit. You know, my background's in science, and so working with journals, reading materials, things along those lines, a lot of it's sort of the bread and butter of teaching. We need people to read, review sort of these you know, these publications that are coming out. But people always turn around and then we have this sort of statement of, but I don't want my course to be a file repository and things. But the thing is, we still actually need to use the files. It's important. So what we're actually asking, and I think, you know, this isn't just necessarily a Canvas thing. This is really sort of any online learning and platform is, or whichever way you're using technology, is how do you get students to engage with that material, and what's the way that you actually want them to engage with the reading material? Now, for me in sciences, it's a discussion. You know, I want them to pick that apart. I want them to, you know, find flaws within the theories. I want them to be able to, you know, peer review. So I want to talk about discussions to begin with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my other screen. And hopefully this is showing for everybody. So there's me talking about science, but I'm going to use a basic journalism course to demonstrate my idea that I'm talking about this morning.
The irony.
The irony. Well, especially when we're talking about peer review and whether or not we actually agree with the statements being made. I suppose a journalism course could be the one. I'll just go into this course. It's just a basic one that we've set up. And to be honest, what I was doing was just using sort of a home page, and we've got some modules. So when we're in here and we're having a look at this, you know, most teachers, you know, they're very aware that Canvas, the UI, it's simple. I can come in and I can click on a module, and in a module I can click on add, and what we can do is we can go and basically upload new files and share those materials really, really easily with students. But then the issue is we actually want them to engage with them. So if, for example, I was wanting to put a file, I'm just going to use this demo one, a lorem ipsum standard text, so I don't break any copyright or anything this morning. But if I put this file into a module, you know, this is great. We can put this in and students can come and click on this and they can open this up and they can view it obviously within Canvas. I'll Obviously, it's just been a little bit slow with my internet this morning, streaming everything. But just wait a second. So we can load it up and the students can view this, great, but I want them to do more with that. And so often what happens is, we'll see people say, all right, we'll put the file in a module. What I want to actually do is come up and then I'll click on add again. And what I'm going to do is add a discussion for them to discuss that paper that I've given them to read. Great, we're giving them material. We're getting these students, to sort of interact and engage with this. But I think everybody sort of understands sort of the user experience and being intuitive with using, sort of the system. We all want the phones that are easy to use, and it's frustrating when we're clicking between apps and tabs and things, just because you've clicked on a link in Facebook where you need to fill in your details because you want to buy some, sort of strange product that was on Facebook that it's picked you up with. Clicking between things, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing where actually let's think about the discussions and let's just think about putting the materials together where the student really needs to sort of use them. So for me, when we're creating discussions, it's all well and good having this file here. Yeah, we can do that. We can add requirements into the module so it ticks off that the students completed it. But let's actually put this file into the discussion as well so the student can answer the discussion whilst looking at the materials. So let me show you the way that we do this. So what I'm going to do is I'll just very quickly create a new discussion. It's going to be a new topic. And I suppose one of the other things that I really like to do as well is to make things easy for the students to see. When I name things within Canvas, I put a verb at the beginning of the title, just so that they know what that sort of activity is. And when the students are coming back online, or we've been talking in a Zoom meeting or something about, look, there's that discussion to do. Yes, they can see the icons and know it's a discussion, but they can also see in the title that this is somewhere where they're going to discuss something.
I used to put a time indicator in there as well, John. So discuss, and then in brackets it might be 15 minutes, just to give them an indicative timeline for something like that. Sometimes, if it's relevant.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It's one of those things that they know how much time to spend on it, especially if with online learning at the moment, and people even. There's the current situation, isn't it? But when we're talking universities and they've got, students who've got part-time jobs, or it's people, with other, personal circumstances trying to fit their learning in around, everything else that's going on in family life. I think it's good, to put that in so they've got that understanding of how much time to set aside that week.
Yeah. Plus, it answers that question: how long is it going to be? How long am I going to be doing this for?
It sounded done. Reminded me of my students. I've lost my train of thought now in the title. For this,
so you were naming it discuss.
Is there too much fake news? That's that one.
That could be a hot debate.
It could. So obviously we've put this in, but the key thing with this is really the placement of the resources now for the students. So when I'm coming to edit this topic, I'm going to show one of the quick tip as well, which I think is quite useful, as long as my internet is coping well this morning. Here we go. The other tip that I've got with this is, I'm just going to drag this across and see. I actually have some standard text on a document for discussions, just to really give students the instructions on what they need to do. There is nothing probably more important in teaching than that clarity of instruction as well, that quality of teaching. So actually putting clear instructions and maybe having some consistency on the expectations is a little thing that's good to do. So I'm just going to paste that into my discussion just for speed, really. And then what I can do is just come and edit the bits that are important. So is there too much news? So the tip here, though, this is standard Canvas. People who are using Canvas will know this. But what we want to do is actually put the resources in here for the students to be accessing whilst they're in the discussion, because otherwise they're going to be going out and they're going to be going into sort of other pages, accidentally clicking on the tab and closing it down. Let's give them the file that they ultimately need to read. So what you can see is we've got the option to add, and this could be any content. I'm sure with you talking about sort of gaming and coding, Graham, the things like, screen shares, screencasts and things along those lines. Dropping that in here just means that the students can watch that if they're doing it with a video and stuff, or things along those lines. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a course document, and we'll go and add this in. And what we've got is we've got my file, which we've just added in here. So this file is now going to be directly within the discussion for them. And if I click on the options, what we can do is we can get this to either automatically open within the screen so they see it all. I'm not going to turn that on because I want the students to have some control. So I'm going to click done. And what we'll do is, you can put all the other settings and everything. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. And if I save this, we'll just get this to load up. My internet's being a little bit slow this morning. But what you'll notice within here is we've got this little icon, which means that ultimately the student, when they're replying in the box down here, and they want to put their comments in, they can actually open the document up on the same screen where they're working. So we can click on the preview. The content's there within the discussion. We can scroll through. We can read what we want to. We can minimize this. We can come and type some comments. Also entertaining. We can put this in. We can go back. We can open the file again and basically read, the next bit. And we can do all that work within the screen where we are. We're not taking people to other locations, navigating through tabs at the top, where probably in some circumstances there's going to be Facebook and WhatsApp and various different things up there that are too easy to click on and distract us from. For the students really in these circumstances, we're keeping them in the one place. They're not going to be pinging you emails and things to say, where's the file that I need to read, which file for that discussion. And, it's just so simple. And, I just think it has a really, really big impact. Yeah.
That'll work well in mobile as well. So if they're on a mobile screen, they'll get the preview inline on their mobile device as well, so they don't have to dive in and around. It's all in that one educational space, whether it's big screen, little screen, tiny screen. Not so much watch, but just keep it in line.
Opening up a screencast on your watch and that, but yeah, like we said with this, I think it's the thing, isn't it? It's just user experience, isn't it? It's just a simple tip, and we talk about this being in discussions as the example. I think, the other side of this is, okay, I want them to interact with this content and engage with each other. There's those circumstances where it's the students actually maybe want to interact with that content. But if we were to put this in a quiz and use the same sort of rich content editor to do that and, give them access to the resources in a quiz, it means they can do the sort of the quick marking, self-concept check, rapid feedback type things. Did I really understand what I've read there or what I've watched there? That side of thing, is really useful. It's just a better experience for them.
It's certainly, John, you're right. And it's really good certainly from a user flow. That idea that once you put content into a system or when you're teaching with it, that you can only use it once at the start, and then you've got to refer back and jump back and leap around. That's actually what is a really good idea. Is that there's no reason for that. That idea that you can just replicate that content throughout your course where it's needed is a really, really good solid tip, because that saves a lot of diving around. Why would you want to dive around like that when? And once you've got it in there, there's nothing to stop you using it multiple times. It's one of the great things about online education is that you can quickly replicate something somewhere else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I see that. I've seen that so many times when people have front-loaded a lot of content and then they've kind of distributed it around their course. You think, well, just replicate that.
Yeah,
just have multiple copies, isn't it? It's okay.
Yeah, fine. It's just the location, and ultimately within Canvas, it's still just one file, isn't it? I'm just putting a link to it in these different places, and and that's useful. And even in things like the feedback, giving a link back to that file can just be really useful. Cool. Well, that was my example to begin with. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to our questions, and you're going to take questions 2 and 3 for us.
Yes, that's the plan.
Got a little bit of the Grantham delay on it. We'll see if anybody actually can put in the chat. I come from a town called Grantham in Lincolnshire. Graham's in Lincolnshire as well. But what we'll see is, because we've got people from all over the world, we'll go for a little quiz question. Can anybody state in the comments on this why Grantham is famous? Okay, we'll see.
And be gentle. That's what I'll say there. I would say that about where I live, John, but it's famous for really nothing.
Fantastic places up there. When this is over, you can get a trip to Cleethorpes. It's going to be.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's it's the nearest seaside town, I suppose, to me. I don't live there, but it's the nearest seaside town.
There's some nice places around there. Okay, right. Question 2. This is one for you. I want to use the grading criteria that matches my qualification and specification. Now, I imagine it's been quite difficult when we're talking colleges with different qualifications in the UK. We've obviously got different, we work with customers all over the world, different qualifications, all levels. So yeah, we'd be interested in your view on this one, Graham, around the grading criteria. So,
okay, so this is actually something that I hear a lot. With certain qualifications and certain strands in the UK, but this I imagine applies, like you say, John, around the world. Canvas you can change the grading criteria in Canvas, obviously dependent on what kind of grading criteria you might want for that assignment and how that interacts. And there's a whole series of things that you can do that actually make your life quicker at the grading end. And you're able to sort of do that quick style grading and use some of the calculations that come from that. I think someone's hit your question on the head there, John, by the way. They've got it. So the idea is that we can tailor the kind of assignments that we want and the kind of grading criteria we want, because that then later, when it comes to sort of the more reporting analytics, has a broader impact, but also the feedback that you're able to generate from that and using the kind of speed grading tools and other tools I'm going to show you gives you quite a good way of being able to grade quickly, grade smartly, but also utilize those specification criteria that are more often than not come with the awarding bodies like BTEC and UAL and however many others there are out there in the world. So let's dive into the Canvas now, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So if I go to my screen, and here we are. So I'm just going to expand that out a little so you just get a bit broader view. There we are. So I'm currently in my Canvas demo environment, and I am going to dive into my Unit 41 3D Environments course. Now, this is actually a BTEC unit from the UK qualifications, and this is actually a real BTEC unit that I've used in the past to teach with. So there's no mystifying here. This is real world 3D environment. If you did this course, you could actually use the Unreal Engine to make games. There you go. So let's first off talk about how grading works and where it might be in the different schemas. So before we dive into the course, let's just quickly go in and just check our, click our grading tab here. And you'll notice that you can already specify, and a lot of people never dive into this because this tends to be something you might have to ask the admin for your particular Canvas installation or however that might be, however that's set up. But you can actually set up grading schemas directly inside of Canvas. Now, I've already set up a couple here. I've got a BTEC standard. So I've got that distinction star, distinction merit pass and not yet achieved. There's actually one missing out of that now, which is not yet passed, but we'll worry about that another time. And I've got the standard letter grades in there, so A minus B plus B. You get the idea of how those are set up. Now, adding those schemas is as easy as clicking the Add Schema button and then going through and defining what you want that to be. I'm not going to do that right now. But you can see that you basically give it a grade range or a percentage range, and that range is linked to the actual grade score. Now, that comes in handy later because when I'm utilizing these inside of my assignments, it will automatically add the appropriate grade into the final grade for that assignment in SpeedGrader if I've set this up at this point. So I'm going to actually be using this BTEC one for the assignment. But just to show you there that setting up the grading schemas, and these would apply right the way through the installation of Canvas for any course I want to use them, because you actually apply these when you go into the create assignment, which is what we're going to do right now. So let me go back into my Unit 41. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and click on my modules just so we can go and have a quick broad view of where the modules are. Hey, here's the modules. And then let's add a assignment in here. So I'm going to add a new assignment. I'm going to call this my grading schema test. The students are going to love that test. So let's put that in there, and let's just have a quick look at where these settings apply and where they appear. So I'm going to actually cover rubrics and how that also ties into the specifics of grading criteria as well. But before we do that, let's just set some of the basics up with this particular assignment. So I'm going to give the assignment a very brief description. There we are. That is the briefest description in the world. And it's the important point here is this section. So I'm going to actually set up this display grade as. So this is what it will display the grade for this assignment in my grading book and in SpeedGrader. This is how it's going to be displayed. And this is where I can choose the different grades. Now, a lot of times this particular little feature inside of the assignments here is missed out or just kind of not really utilized. But it is actually very, very powerful. So obviously I could choose percentage or complete and incomplete points. What I'm going to choose is GPA scale, which is a grade point average scale, but it's a little bit of a misnomer because what that does allow me to do is view my grading schemes. And then I can actually select another grading scheme here. And you can see I've got all of the various grading schemes that were in my list. So I'm going to choose that BTEC standard one that I created. And I'm going to use that grading standard, and then I'm done. So now the grading criteria that's going to be shown inside my gradebook, and the way I grade this is going to be directly linked to those percentage scales and these particular grade markings here. So I'm not using ABC or 55 points out of 100. These would actually, certainly in certain UK qualifications, these are very specific names for the level that you're at and the level of learning outcome that you've demonstrated. So.
That's the thing, Graham, isn't it? With it being so customizable as well, that we're talking about this with qualifications, but say that you're working with younger students or things along those lines, you can set those up to be, whatever you want them to be.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
And that type of stuff.
Yeah.
If you've got some sort of different, scheme that you're working with other students. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing to stop you putting gold star, silver star, bronze star. There's nothing to stop you putting in, tying that into the classroom gradings, things that you might have on the wall. So if your students are accumulating, they have flags at the school that my daughter attends. So they get certain green flags if they've done well. They get a super flag if they collect so many of those, they get points, which then actually do equal money on their little food card. So the points do mean prizes for them if they do particularly well. So if you operate that kind of operate that way at a school level, this can easily tie in straight into that as well. And it's something that, again, is familiar for the students when they see it.
Yeah.
So as much as some of the syntax around it, GPA scale, once you get past that and you think, right, I know what I'm doing, GPA scale is the way I'm going to add my own scale, then you're good to go. I'm going to just choose a very simple submission type on this. I'm just going to go for online and file uploads, just because I'm not actually going to be demoing that part, but so it makes a bit of sense. And then I'm going to just go down here. I'll choose a due date because it's just very good practice to do that. You don't want to be doing that. Otherwise, you end up with lots of undue dates and it gets messy. I'm going to publish that as well. So I've got my very brief described assignment here. Now, the important point here is that I'm also going to add a rubric. Now, rubrics and learning outcomes, I think, are two of the most misunderstood things about a virtual learning platform. And Canvas in particular does these things very, very well. What a rubric is just a collection of handy, easy to use grading criteria that's directly linked to learning outcomes. So I'm going to add the rubric. Now, in true tradition for these kind of demos, I've actually got some I've prepared earlier. And the handy thing is you can actually download and create all of these things in advance inside of Canvas, and then you can simply call on those when you want to create a rubric. Remember, a rubric is just a collection of different outcomes. So I'm going to find a rubric, and handily enough, I happen to know that in here, I've got my BTEC criterion in here. In fact, let me find my specific Unit 41. Here we go. So I've already put in all the Unit 41 BTEC criteria that's specific for this specification. Now, where does that come from? That comes from BTEC itself. So when you get the qualification specification, there often is a detailed list of the grading criteria, the specification, and the learning outcomes that map directly to that. And in fact, they have a very, in this particular case, quite a very well spelled out and very well described pattern for that. The UAL does, and there's a number of the UK qualifications do. You don't have to map it like that. I'm just doing it out of convenience to just show you a feature that's in here. So I'm going to choose this particular outcome and this criteria, and I'm going to use that rubric. And you'll see straight away that the BTEC criterion for this, so the distinction level criteria there is to produce, obviously this is just a demo, but to produce that. Then there's obviously these little pointage links, and I'll show you why that's important in a moment. But what's quite important is that at the moment, then I've got a direct link to my BTEC criteria inside of my assignment, and I'm able then to show you how I can grade with that. So let's assume now that this has gone live. Let's assume that I've had submissions in here, because I'm actually just going to go straight into SpeedGrade to just show you this. So now I've got my criterion in. Let's go. So into SpeedGrader I go. SpeedGrader is, I think, arguably one of the most powerful live tools in the VLE world to create grading and marking, and do your marking efficiently and quickly on any platform that I've come across. It does all of the heavy lifting, and also it works on mobile devices, so it is particularly powerful. Now, obviously, I didn't submit any work for this, so the student isn't going to have an assignment, but we're demoing, so let's just pretend we've got one. Yeah. So I could be marking and do all my marking and grading and do all of the various commentary and things in there, but that's not what I want to show you today. What I want to show you is this particular area here. So aside from the fact that I can add comments, and I'm going to come to this in a minute, and varying types of comment in there and create that kind of discussion tree in there, I want to view the rubric for this. Now, that rubric, remember, was that grading criteria, and you'll notice that as I roll over there, it's starting to highlight those. What I'm actually able to do with this is grade with those. So I can immediately demonstrate that this particular assignment has hit this criteria. And if I click on that and then save that, you'll notice straight away, give it a second, you'll notice straight away, let's do that again. I might have to save this. Go in here, click on save, and then if we go back and go into our gradebook, you can see that how, from my point of view, grading is super quick. I can just go in here, dive through in here, click on any of those particular things I want. In fact, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to go back and just quickly edit something. So let me just go back.
I want Graham. Doesn't allow rubric grading? Is that the checkbox?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's my bad. So let me go back in here. Let's just quickly change that. Yeah. So use this for grading. There we go. Come on, Graham. And then if we go back into SpeedGrader now. So now if I do my rubric in here, okay, there we are. So my grades now appeared in there. So whatever I choose inside of my rubric, so let's say the student is the distinction, that is now going to change that grading criteria automatically, which means it's saving me the time of having to go in, type things in, do all of that. Now, the reason it's saying hidden is because these grades are hidden overall until I release them to the students. That's part of the remit of the gradebook. But also, remember I said I can add commentary to this. So I can add just text comments here. This was great. Where is the work? I can add basic comments in there, of course. I can also record commentary as well in here. So what is a particularly handy thing, and what gives a lot of assignments really great gravitas, is if the teacher who's marking that appears on the work, like the teacher does. Now, this is a really good way, especially during these particularly difficult times with COVID and all the other things where you can't physically be around those students. This is a really good way of keeping that link between your presence as the teacher, those as your students, and being able to give them almost a direct feeling that you're still involved with the online experience. So I can record myself very quickly. I'm going to do that. Just record this feedback. So, hey, great job. Although you haven't actually submitted anything, I am sure that when you do, it will be brilliant. So I can quickly create that, save that into my feedback tree here, and you can see that commentary starts to create there. Now, the good news there is as well, I have other tools. I can do audio as well if I'm not totally comfortable with video, or maybe I haven't got access to a webcam at that time. And there's also speech to text as well. So I can just click in here, great job. Maybe think about the section in red. So I can quickly add text in there as well and submit that. So you can see that the working environment for that speed grader, that tool there, allows me to create a feedback that becomes a dialogue. Now the students have the same tools, John, so they can comment back, they can talk back, and it creates that whole feedback loop. So instead of me being an end-loaded feedback, I'm able to very quickly grade. The students can get that grade. It automatically calculates for me using that grading schema that I put in there. So had I changed that from distinction to gold star, when I clicked on that, it would have been gold star, the same difference. And then, of course, I can then create that personalized dialogue experience. Now, whether they're school kids or whether they're college kids or whatever, university students, whatever level, there's no point when a personal interaction on an assignment doesn't have a lot more tangible value than just some text comments.
I think that's
an experience.
I think that's a really important point as well. You know, we talk about the COVID-19 and that sort of situation at the moment, but I think this carries over all the time as well when we're working with students. You know, they're people. They've got different characters. They've got different ways that they, you know, respond to feedback in the way that it comes through. And, you know, we've probably all been in that situation as well, where we've received an email from somebody and, you know, if you read it in an angry voice or read it in a happy voice, you're going to perceive the way that that message is being delivered differently. And I think that's one of the real advantages with the video and the audio comment when we're giving the feedback is yes, there's the understanding of the feedback on what you're actually saying. But like you say, that personal touch, that perception of this, you know, is this a criticism of the work that I've been given? Is this supportive? You know, is it genuine feedback? It really gives that touch to it where the students, I think, they can understand it better, you know, with what you're actually asking and what they would need to do to improve it. And like you said, they can ask the questions as well. So, you know, from my experience as well of working with students, it was just fantastic. And, you know, I think one of the other things with it where it's really interesting, if people that are online are working with younger students that are still in schools, you know, they've got parents that are going to be involved in their life as well, and maybe with that work, and their understanding of the written feedback as well, you know, they might put a different perception on it as well. So actually having the teacher speak and the kid and the parent can listen to that, you know, massive impact on that. And when I was still teaching, you know, there were parents that said to me, I actually understand what you're saying to them, and it means that I can try and help them now. Whereas, you know, the other ways of grading, you know, the traditional ways we used to do it, it just wasn't as effective.
Absolutely, John. And if we just dive back into Canvas, I just wanted to show something else as well. So just to quickly show you, John, actually, when you actually have when you do see the work that a student has submitted inside of Canvas, and obviously in this instance, I can just highlight things. I've got quite a really good control here of being able to direct the feedback specifically to the areas of that document that I want. So well done, in control of that. But one particularly useful feature here as well. So I can go through that, I can mark that, I can strike out, I can even draw straight on the screen. I can say, no way, don't do that, that kind of thing, add commentary to that. Now, the students can get all of that. They can also comment on this. So they, again, that dialogue. But also you'll notice this submission to view here. Now, let's say I've got a student that submitted, we're going through that feedback process, and the student has submitted that work, and they've done it numerous times. So I've given them feedback, they've submitted the work, I've given them more feedback, they've submitted the work. Now, what we can do here in Canvas is actually choose historically which work to go back and look at, because it stores all of those versions with all of that grading and all of that commentary on it. So if I go back to when this particular work was not yet achieved at its first instance, you'll see that loads in. It's a completely different, obviously in this instance, a different submission, but there's also a completely different dialogue. There's different marks on it and different everything else. I can go then to the next version. And what you can see is how that becomes an on-running dialogue, not just around the feedback, but also around the versions of that document and the stages that it's gone. So it shows immediate progression. Now that's really powerful for any qualification bodies that might come in. So if you act for externals in HE who come in and need to view the work and see the evidence of the quality of the grading and the criterion, or if you've got Ofsted or any kind of governmental body that comes and checks the quality of education to make sure that you're adhering to the rules and the regulations around what can be done in feedback and how it works. And you need to show student progression. Has this student got better from when they started? Right there, you've got a tool that is as straightforward as a drop down and drop down menu, and you can view multiple versions. And in fact, you could even use that if you had a project that ran over a significant period of time and you got those students to submit different parts of that project. You could still use the speed grades to go through that and see the different stages of how that's developed. And that applies to all sorts of different types of qualification. If you're in performing arts, or if you're in anything that involves making and doing, or sculpting or dancing, you can record yourself doing performance 1, and then you could submit 10 performances. And by the 10th performance, you're getting real criticism from your staff all the way along, and there would be definite progression. And that, again, is the power of having video and all of those options available to you in something like SpeedGrader, which is by name a speed tool for grading. It does exactly what it says in the tin.
Yeah, on that note, actually, next week when we run a session on Thursday morning as well, we've got Jess Jones who works with us, who's going to be on the session with us, and we are going to be looking at those types of assignments in the video. And
perfect.
Yes, fantastic musician as well. So we're going to be talking about sort of performing arts and that side of thing. Although that would apply to other situations as well. I'm thinking, Graham, actually, with what we're talking about there, it sort of links us into our third question pretty well. And whilst you're sort of demonstrating how that grading scheme displays in the gradebook and carries over, the third question that we had, which ties in with this very closely, is if we've got students that aren't engaging in the content, they're not submitting the work that we put these assignments, and even if we've set up the grading scheme, if the work's not coming in, we can't give them the feedback, or maybe they're not interacting with the content, the reading materials that we were talking about, or the discussions that we created earlier. How does Canvas make it easier for us as teachers to do this? Because I'm talking to teachers at the moment, and I'm teachers very close to me as well, who are going through different systems. They're writing on post-it notes and sending emails to kids that they've not submitted work, and then they're having to go through, look at another kid, and send stuff through to them. How does Canvas make that sort of process easier, enhance basically that sort of situation for the teacher?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the good news there is that there's actually a number of different ways, and what we've got with Canvas is a particular structure around how that formulates from the various different data strands that are collected, as it were, via Canvas as somebody progresses through a course. And so we can sort of look at that and say, let's see how Canvas captures that, how it presents that to us in the most useful way for us, and what we can do about it, and how quickly. So let's dive back into Canvas now. So what I've got here is a gradebook. Now, whenever you create an assignment in Canvas, it creates an entry in a gradebook. We used to call these, old-fashioned language was tracking documents. But what this is this is just a complete list of all the assignments across the top here. And then obviously the various grading criteria, the grades that I might have issued for that, and also whether they've submitted. It's just a live data tracking system. So this tracks immediately which students have submitted, what their current grades are for that, and where they're at. So that's a live document. Now, that's the gradebook with my actual grades in, and there are some really useful tools just inside of that I can do. So let's quickly have a look at some of those. So you'll notice each one of these items has got the little 3 dots, an ellipsis or something, I think they call that. And I can choose that, and you can see I get a number of different options that appear in there. Now, one of the most useful ones, so I'm going to look at this and say, right, I've got several students here, but notably I've got a couple of students that have got reasonably good scores, but let's have a look at this one. Well, there's a couple of low scores. Let's go in here, and I'm going to message some of these students who. So firstly, I can choose message students who haven't submitted yet. So I can very quickly choose that, and it automatically adds those 2 students in, and then I can quickly message those students. So why have you left this so late? So I can quickly do that.
Save so much time, won't it?
Absolutely. So I don't have to go and search for those students. I don't have to go and try and find them. Canvas knows that those students have got those scores, or they haven't submitted yet, automatically add them. And by the way, that sends them individual messages as well. So it's not like they're sent a group message. So Bob Smith there isn't going to know that Eddie has not submitted either. They're sent individually. It's just in a convenience list. But I can actually alter that as well. So I can send a message to students that haven't been graded, or I can choose the students that have scored less than, and let's say less than 4. Well, that brings up these students and tells me the scores that they've got there. So I can send those students an immediate message. Now that's useful because if I've got a range of students that have scored reasonably low, I can send them a message, maybe send them a link to additional work, or I can ask them to come and see me. What I can do is stage an intervention. And I'm doing it literally from one screen there.
See me after class, yeah, the old-fashioned one. I think one of the good things to highlight on that as well is, you know, yes, it's putting together all the students for you in that, but if you're in the situation where you've got a student in that group and you know that there was reasons for it that they don't need to be sent that message, you can remove them from that list as well.
Yeah,
I found that with certain students that, you know, maybe you were giving them an extension or something along those lines.
You know, so you can just click the X there. I know why Bob Smith hasn't submitted yet, because he's actually been off sick. So let's remove him from that list. Nice and easy. Again, all from one quick access screen. I'm not diving into an email client, having to cut and paste email addresses. Then maybe with GDPR at the moment, perhaps send it to the wrong people. Remember, there's lots of restrictions about what you can and shouldn't be sending different across. So this actually aligns and keeps you safe in that respect, because you know that they're going to get individual messages, and that's all under control. Now that's all well and good from this particular gradebook, but I also wanted to show, before we just quickly show off an analytics screen, I just wanted to show off this Learning Mastery gradebook. So the Learning Mastery gradebook is slightly different because this is linked directly to those learning outcomes. And so those ones that we showed when we did the grading, where we graded with that rubric and it automatically calculated those. This is where it creates a picture of those. And what I can see here is very quickly, I've got my distinction and my criteria. This is definable. So I can change this to whatever I want it to be. So that could again be that gold star, silver star, bronze star, whatever you want. And I can actually click on these and drill down, because I'm actually interested in who is passing and who is near passing. Well, I've got a few near passes, and what I can see here is that this particular learning outcome, it looks to me like if I roll over that, 50% of the students have got that, but there's a whole chunk of students that are not doing very well. So I might need to take a moment to look into that. I might need to see exactly why that's the case. So that gives me some information about maybe the materials on that course are too hard. Maybe the materials in there are not working for them. Again, I can do an intervention. And also you'll notice that there's also a student here that's got a red flag across 2 programs. And I might want to see, actually, everyone seems to be struggling with that learning outcome, but Eddie is the only one that seems to have struggled with that one. So I can click on Eddie's name there and bring out a context card. And again, this just gives me that window into that student. So I can say, right, okay, well, he's got a good grade average there. He's missing 10 pieces of work though. The last items that he's had graded were pretty good, but there's some really low scores in amongst that. And I've seen that he's had a bit of a drop off compared to the rest of the activity with his class. He's actually got medium participation, which means that's the activities that he's involved with on that course. And also he's got a limited number of page views as well. So he's not actually clicking and engaging with all the materials that I'm putting in there. Now, what that means is I might need to think, actually, I need to message him straight away about this. So I'm able to do that by simply clicking on his little email link there, and I can send him a message straight away, and that will go and send him a notification as well that he's got a message from me waiting for him inside of his Canvas inbox. So when he gets to that, so again, I can stage that immediate intervention and start to create that dialogue. What's wrong? Is there something? I've noticed that there's a drop off. I'm able to do a very quick test and see where that is. Also, I can just check on some more broader analytics as well. So if I click on that as well, into more of an analytical, just take a moment to arrive. It's my Wi-Fi. Here we go. So I can see now, this is Eddie's personal analytics. So I can see, looking at the course grades here, that there's a lot of work here that he's not quite achieved. He's doing quite well when he does submit. If I look at his weekly online activity, yeah, it's a bit flatline for the start, so he hasn't really engaged straight away. And then there's kind of an erratic picture. There's a sudden spike of interest here where he suddenly decided to get more involved. But there has been a bit of an erratic picture over this particular period of time. You can see I've got weak patterns there. Let's just have a quick check of communication. Well, he hasn't tried to reach out to me as the instructor, but then again, I haven't sent him any messages either. And if I was, that would give me an idea of how many messages and over what period of time. So right from that right from that screen in the gradebook, I'm able to go diving into that particular student, look at their case specifically, and then interact and create interactions and create messages and create and contact that student directly from there with complete context of where I was at before. So I know why I'm contacting. So I'm not coming out of the system, looking at a big long list and thinking, why did I need to contact those 30 students? Yeah. It's all taken care of in that one system right away, which is very, very powerful because it means you're intervening, creating those interventions at the time that they're important, not later down the line. That means more to that student. I'm capturing that student's issues right there as well. So I'm able to say right from that, and you can keep it. And this thing is, because it's live and it's updated, it's like a live analytics. It's able to then track that. So I can do that for any of those students that are on my program. I'm able to create that profile. But you might want to say, well, what if you want analytics for the whole program? Well, again, that's something we can do. So quickly dive back into my course and then just go for my analytics. So that analytical picture that we saw that was for that student. And by the way, John, the students get that too. So if the students log in, they can see their own interactions and their own analytics as well. So they can look at the picture of work that they're doing and submissions and participation, and from their own self say, well, actually, yeah, I clearly I'm not necessarily engaging as much material as I could be, and so you can create that dialogue around that. Now, what the analytics do here is take the aggregated data for this course and put it into one specific page. Now, you'll notice along the bottom, I've got my different assignment types and different discussions and assignments and quizzes down there. I can switch those in and out, so I can isolate those. And then I can even add specific students to this. So let's just add this top student here. And you can see that this particular student is actually doing quite well above the actual class average, which is this blue. So they're actually doing above average on most things. They've dropped a little bit below here though. So I might want to contact that student straight away. And again, I'm able to do that straight from here. But also you'll notice that I've got a student list as well. I can add more students in there and create that aggregated picture. So I'm looking now at my students' progress through that course, through the eyes of the analytics. And what this is, instead of all those numbers and letters and that mystifying around what analytics can be inside of a course, this is something that makes complete sense to me. I'm looking at my grade averages, I'm looking at my assignments, and I'm seeing students who are doing either well or not, and I'm able to then take action on that straight away. Likely, also, I can dive into the analytics as well. Yes, sorry, John, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, this I think is the bit that, you know, the teacher in me that this sort of appeals to as well, where you're sort of having a look at that engagement from the students. I think it's, you know, at these times it's just, isn't it? You know, we absolutely from the grade book with, you know, about submissions, but sometimes you're looking just at, you know, as the student actually interacted with something else, and this is, you know, this is just fantastic for that, isn't it? Of, you know, looking well,
absolutely. And remember that, you know, normally in the normal run of things, when you're teaching a lot of classes and the students are in and out and all of that, your teacher radar is often pinging. So this stuff is omnipresent in your life. You know the students that might be struggling, or you know those students. Well, if you can't physically interact with those students, and sometimes you just need to, you can see students are struggling. You don't necessarily have analytics to tell you that that particular student is struggling. You can see it with your own eyes, but without that ability at the moment, because of all the various situations that we find ourselves in, this is a good way of being able to just keep tabs on that and keep that flow going. So I can check on all of the different resources in my course here and see whether the students have clicked on them and how many views and participations they've had. So I might find that I put tons of resources in here and the students aren't necessarily interacting with them. That might mean that I might need to rethink those resources, or maybe have a look at maybe reducing them or redirecting the students to them in some way. Likewise, again, I can add particular students in here to see what their average page views like compared to the rest. So this green line is Verge, the student, and the blue is the rest of the class. So I can see that Verge is actually more or less following the same curve. There's been a few points when she's done more interaction. And then likewise, so again, popular resources, and then I can even then click on the students in my class there. I'm just going to remove Verge out just so you can see them all. So I can see the grade average, the percentage of work they've submitted on time, their participation. So this again gives me that snapshot into what they're doing and why. And you can see, quite important that, again, I can message students who from here straight away. So I can do that. I can type in a range of grades, or I can choose which students I want, whether there's work missing, whether it's late. Again, that full ability to be able to stage interventions at that particular time. So I can see the data and say, actually, looking at these grade averages here, Theo there is about 55%, 47% of that works on time. That's not a great picture for Theo there. I'm going to do some messaging and looking at my content from the previous online. They're not interacting with that in the way they should be. Maybe I need to ramp that up. Maybe I need to put some more focused stuff. Maybe it's too hard. So maybe I need to look at what I'm doing. But likewise, let's see what impact that has immediately on my students. And I can do that by looking at the analytical picture. All available from one click inside of Canvas as well, which is why it makes it super powerful.
I think there's some really sort of good examples in there as well when we're looking at those sort of certain situations that do come up through sort of like the academic year and the situation we have. You know, let's say we've got a big assessment that's coming up and we've shared a resource which is sort of fundamental to that. You know, the ability to view which students have actually viewed that document and being able to send a message directly from there and remind them this document needs to be seen, I think is such a useful tool. And for me, from the other side of it is, you know, my little girl's a bit younger than this at the moment, but, you know, when she's going to school later, to sort of have that information and, you know, for a teacher to be able to sort of share that sort of interaction with you as a parent, you know, when you have the parent-tutor, parent-teacher meetings and those types of things, it's really good to have the insights into that, you know, for those conversations to support these students, I think. Well,
absolutely. And the thing is, John, what you're not getting is just lots of analytics stuff for the sake of analytics being there. Everything you see there has a purpose and a rationale to help you be able to help those students in one way or another. And that's actionable analytics. That's a big difference between just having lots of charts and graphs on there that tell you all sorts of wonderful things. There's nothing actionable from that. From here, I'm able to contact a student, contact a range of students about specifics, or look at the picture of the kind of submissions and assignments I'm setting and judge whether they're being very successful on that course or not. Well, that's a powerful tool.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. Conscious of the time, Graham, we've gone into our usual massive education conversations in Canvas, which I enjoy doing with each other. I don't know if there's any questions from anybody online in particular for us to answer. You know, I know that the question we asked about what is Grantham famous for, we have the birthplace of Margaret Thatcher as the answer. That people are correct about that. That is one of the reasons Grantham is famous. Isaac Newton was schooled in Grantham as well. Same school as I went to. Students I used to teach often used to ask me what Isaac Newton was like. So I don't know how old I was. And then the most important fact about Grantham for people online is the most boring town in the UK. Well, it was awarded 1980. It was awarded the most boring town in the UK. Okay. What we'll do is we'll wrap this up if there's no questions that have been coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Graham.
And always with you.
Yeah. We're going to be running these sessions on Thursday mornings at 9:30. That's UK time. We're looking at
John's frozen.
We're all over the world at the moment. Next week, like I said earlier, we've got Jess Jones, and we're going to delve a little bit deeper into some of the stuff Graham was talking about today in terms of the assignments. We're going to be thinking about assignments from that perspective of sort of the video footage that can come through. You know, so we'll be looking a little bit at sort of like the student mobile app. Some of the tools that we've got, like Studio and things like that. So anybody who's online, it'll be a pleasure to see you again next week. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning, and I wish everybody a good day. So is this where we do it? It's the bye from me and it's the bye from Greg?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't remember which TV show that's from.
Yeah, goodbye from them. Goodbye. I don't know if you're that side of me on my screen, you're the other side, so that way. Goodbye. The other way.
That way, yeah. Morecambe and Wise.
Anyway, stay safe. Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe.